Thank you for coming here to Kyabra today for us to commemorate really the stolen generations and to hear a little bit about our nation's history. I might start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I don't know how many years we've done this sorry event for. It's for a few years now, and it's wonderful to have it in our beautiful yarning circle here at Kyabra. So I might start by introducing Louise Howard, who's from the State Archives, and allow her to say some words before we introduce our very prominent speaker today, Aunty Teresa. Thanks.
Thanks, Jean. And thank you for the introduction. So for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Louise Howard. I'm the Queensland State Archivist. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Kyabra people, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge that as the Archives is a place for learning, we want to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have the traditional knowledge keepers of this land and have been for tens of thousands of years, and that they have their own keeping places in addition to the colonial keeping places that we at the Archives manage. I'd like to extend that respect to all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us here today, and particularly to Aunty Teresa Power, and thank her for her time here with us today. Thank you to Kyabra Community Association for inviting Queensland State Archives to partner on delivering this National Sorry Day event. Ours is a partnership that has been established for several years now, and we look forward to continuing to work with Kyabra on delivering events that commemorate important days like this. Today we remember and we reflect on the true history of our country, and we acknowledge the mistreatment of the stolen generations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were forcibly removed from their families and their communities. The first National Sorry Day was held 1 year after the Bringing Them Home report. Among the devastation the report documents, there's also the recognition in the vital role that archives play in providing access to the personal and family records connected to the stolen generations. Tragically, for many people, archival records are the only records they have that can connect them to their past and their family. Queensland State Archives is a place that connects people to their past, and we aim to be an archive that fosters truth-telling and healing. Through our First Nations First program, we're supporting the upcoming Truth-Telling and Healing Inquiry, and we'll be working with community to help them access records through our metadata project, which is aiming to add culturally meaningful descriptions to the records to enable people who need to find those records to find them. We're developing stronger relationships with the community and personal histories team who have spent so many years on this important work, and with Link Up. We acknowledge there's still much healing to be done, and Queensland State Archives remains committed to supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as they seek connections to their families and their histories. Thank you again to Kyabra for hosting this important event, and I don't want to take up too much time because on this occasion I think Jean is the person that you've all come to listen to, and I'll pass back to her.
Thank you, Louise. So all the guests here today have been really excited to hear and learn from you today, Aunty Teresa. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Aunty Teresa, and for us to all hear and reflect upon what this day means in hearing her and her people's story. So I'll hand over to you, Teresa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm Aunty Teresa Power. I'm a Brisbane elder now, and I would like to first acknowledge the ancestors of all of Australia lands, our past, our present and for our future. And for meeting here today on this sacred ground in talking, learning and asking questions. Firstly, I would like to show you a map of Australia. You've probably seen a map of Australia before, but all the colours of the map of Australia are all tribes. So in having that, that was how Australia was invaded, in taking Aboriginal people either off their land or then separating the children from their mothers, the fathers and the siblings. For me, I've never met my family. I've been looking for my family since I was in my 30s. I found out that I was Aboriginal. They said that I was Islander and that my birth mother didn't want me. So I had two lovely people come along in my life to adopt me. But from one lie to another lie to another lie, it just got messier and messier. So when I was in my 30s and Link Up rang me to tell me who I am, I honestly thought they had the wrong person, and so they wanted to make an appointment to come out and see me, and they were able to show me the dorms I was in, and then went from the dorms to a home to go and get adopted. So my adopted father was still alive at this stage. My adopted mother wasn't. It affected him quite badly because they were lied to. And so he felt that he had taken some of my life away from me, but he didn't. And I did say to him that if I ever get to meet family on my journey, that I would never leave him, because he was the only one that I got to know after coming out from dorms and a home. So being in the dorms, I don't know if you've ever saw the movie The Rabbit Proof Fence. The two ladies that you would see at the end of the movie, I knew them. Bless them, they're passed away now. The story that you see in The Rabbit Proof Fence is quite mild because it's quite horrific what we had to go through. And it's hard because talking to either children or people about it, you have to be very mindful on what you're saying to a child, to then, if an adult wants to hear, be up to the graphic. But children get it. So I just get the feeling that I try to look back on how my mother must have felt by getting little ones around her and babies snatched out of her arms, and to be pushed to the ground and never to have your children again. To never be given a reason why. When I was in dorms, my skin colour was a bit darker, but we had to keep saying we're white. And even little darker children that were there were saying the same thing. So we're all sitting in a row going, we're white, and we're just thinking we're funny. having no idea of what we're really saying and why we're saying. We weren't allowed to go to school because we were too stupid. They said that our brains weren't developed enough, so we couldn't go to school. We had to scrub floors and do chores around the place. We looked after, if we were old enough, we'd look after the babies. And then they'd get, different men would come along. I don't know if they were government or what they were. They would come along and you'd get called out every so often. So many would get called out. And they check your teeth and they check down the back of your neck, because on your back your skin would show how dark you were compared to your arms or your face or anything. So they could tell from your skin how dark you were. And then some would disappear from that. I didn't know where they went to after that. We would have a bucket for night time to go to the toilet. We'd have a chore on who would have the chore to empty the buckets in the morning. And then there were certain places where we were that had a creek or tap water running. And then we have to get the creek water or the tap water in the same bucket, and that used to have to go for our porridge. So we didn't get milk or anything like that, or fruit. We would be lucky to get porridge twice a day. We used to get up to a little bit of mischief to try and pay back the nuns of what they used to do to us. So when they had hang their stockings out, one of us girls would creep out through the window at night time and have all these prickles, and we'd stick all the prickles in their stockings. And then you'd hear them calling out to us in the morning for us to own up. So we used to all get flogged then. But it was fun at the time, because you'd see them there trying to pick their prickles out of their toes and everything. So we used to get up to mischief to pay back to them. That the hardest thing we couldn't understand is why our mothers didn't want us anymore. What did we do? Why don't they come and see us? And then when you got moved around, they changed your name. So my name got changed 7 times. So they can't find you. That's in case the parents are let off on land somewhere they could be working. And if they take a runner, then they're looking for their children. And I remember being up Cherbourg, up there, and then we could not mind that, because I don't remember her, but there was one of my little friends, she could actually see her mother from probably where your trees are down at the driveway there. There was a big fence, and he was all mothers in there, and they're wailing, calling out for their children. And the children are wailing back at them, trying to get their mothers. And you'll see other little girls, 6, 7-year-old, holding the sibling, you know. And I look back at that and I think, how could a human being think that that was a normal thing to do? to rank a child out of a mother's arms. I can't answer those questions. The hardest thing for me in growing up is I'm not accepted by Aboriginals and I'm not accepted with the white. I'm nobody. To try and get anything, you've got no birth certificate. So you have to try and get a birth certificate made. And then it's when you show the man-made birth certificate, they won't accept it because it's not original. So it's taken me up to now to get an 18 plus card, and now I'm accepted, and I'm only 70. So it takes us a lot to try and get what we need or to buy, because there's nothing there, nothing to prove who we are. And you know, like when you go for applications, they'll say, oh, have you got your birth certificate, you got this, you got that? No, oh, well, we can't accept it. So it's even the same sort of thing of trying to get a driver's licence. It's, as I said, it's a really bad ripple effect. It hurts the child. Then if you do get adopted, the adopted parents are lied to, so they're hurt. And then as you're getting older, it keeps coming back and reminding you, you can't leave it back there. It's something else comes up. No, you're not accepted. No, we can't give you this. You haven't got any proof. And so it just goes on and on. When my adopted father passed away, they ended up taking the money back that my adopted father left me as his biological child. They told me that I couldn't have it because I'm not his biological child. I was never really up for adoption. So they took his money. So he did adopt me, but by the law, I really wasn't allowed up for adoption. So that's what I mean about the ripple effect. I'm really glad he never got to hear that. That would have cut him up more. One thing they could never take away from me, they could take his money, it didn't worry me. They couldn't take the love and the care and the nurturing that he gave me. And that's one thing they couldn't take from me. One thing I wanted to do is I wanted my original name back in respect of my birth parents. I had to pay $175 to get the last name back. If I wanted the first name with it, then I had to pay $300 and something for it. I didn't want the first name because I think people probably think I was rude. I was so used to Teresa, so I stayed with Teresa, but I took Clancy. So in respect of both parents, I'm Clancy hyphenated Power. And that's my closure for both of them. It's important for people of Australia to know the history of what happened, because it's like Germany, the people that live there, they've got that history of what Hitler done. They didn't do it, but that's history. So you leave the history there, you learn by that, and that will never happen again. And that's why I'm very honoured to be able to speak about what happened to me, how it's reflected on me, that it would never happen to any other culture again, and the future generations can grow and be more free, but still understand history. It might not be a nice history to understand that you know, some people have come up and said to me, I'm sorry, Auntie, what my ancestors done to you. And I went, no, it's not for you to apologise to me. We walk together. We walk together and it's not going to happen to anybody, but I do appreciate you coming and supporting the culture and supporting me and not looking at me thinking, well, that happened back then, it didn't happen to me, so I don't care. It has to affect people that live in the country, because it's not nice how a human being can do that. How can one human being think that they can hurt another human being and get away with it? And the silly part was how dumb they were back then anyway. They were calling us dumb, that we couldn't go to school, but they thought if they could change the colour of our skin, they got rid of Aboriginals. They never got rid of it from in here. It always was here. And that was one part they couldn't get rid of. So who was the stupid one? Wasn't me.
Aunty Teresa, what part of Australia do you know where your land is?
I'm from Waka Waka. The Waka Waka is from Gayndah up towards Townsville.
Okay.
But where I was my mother had me, she named me, and the Royal Brisbane Hospital were involved in it.
Okay.
So it wasn't just the nuns, the priests, the police, the government, the Royal Brisbane Hospital was involved. So Aboriginal women were only allowed to have their babies there, and then sometimes they even just said to them, oh, your baby died. They took the baby and handed the baby over to go to the homes. And then they just told them to walk back. So some of them walked back to Sherwood and took them days and days. They never helped them to get back anywhere. So they were quite involved with the whole lot of it. And that's what research does. I was really surprised when I found out, as I kept going and going and going, and then I found out that the Royal Brisbane Hospital was involved in it. I mean, there's a book done on it, and it was amazing because a lot of things have been kept, like, oh, we better not let that out. Yeah. But that doesn't mean the Royal Brisbane Hospital's bad now, you know. That's what was happening back then. But yeah, so a lot of the mothers that had their babies, they told them that they were dead. And they just took their children from them. For me, I was on country with my mother, I assume because she took me home, and so I was taken from her.
Okay.
Yeah, and my birth father, he was killed by the non-Indigenous people, but he was separated from my mother, and he was down towards Sydney. He's buried in with a lot of other Aboriginal men in an unmarked grave. They're just all put in together, where they were clearing the roads and things like that. He got put into jail because he was only getting a shilling, and Mum had to feed us and, you know, try and get food and keep us. So he got put into jail because he wasn't paying rent. He only got a shilling to feed the family, whereas the non-Indigenous people he was working with were getting pounds. And he couldn't afford, it was either food or rent. So that's why he got put into jail. And I don't know, I'm only surmising this because I've tried to fill in the gaps. But the time my father got put into jail and my mother still had me and others, then all of a sudden there's a gap there, like we're taken. And I'm wondering if they took us then because they found her that she couldn't look after us. So she wasn't earning the money. That's the only thing I can think of, because there's a gap there, and I've only tried to fill in the gap myself. Yeah, so it just seemed strange that he was in because he couldn't pay rent. So father was gone, mother's still with us, and then all of a sudden mum's going into slavery and we're out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the names and what they used to do with your names too, and they probably did it with the adults, I assume. As you got older, the name of your street, you take your name away and take the street name. So then you might pick Mary Johnson or Rob Smith, you know. You weren't allowed to use your own names anymore. So the adults were the same. They took their names away from them, and that's when the language and all was taken. If they spoke language, they were beaten to death. So you weren't allowed to use the language at all, which is really hard for the culture, because for me to teach the young people respect, be proud of your culture, and I go to multicultural schools because I love learning about other cultures, and I try to stop the racism, you know, all the cultures mixed together and share, all that sort of thing. I often get from my own culture the kids, like, Aunty, how come my friend, he comes from India, he can speak his language and I'm not allowed to speak mine? Where's mine? And then I explain to them the truth. It's went years ago, and people that have, especially how old they are, like I said, you've got to be mindful. And I'll just say, well, a lot of the older people now have passed away and that went with them. And I don't know how to speak my language. So the language that we're speaking this is our second language, you know, and it's hard. And the kids get angry about that. And I'll just say, well, you can still be proud though. You're the oldest culture in the world. I said, how much bigger can you get? You know, I said, that's awesome. And I'm very proud of who I am. So I said, you know, you can dance, you can do art. And I said, and if you can't do that, you just be a proud young Aboriginal person and be respectful. So that's about all I can tell you, because they just kept changing our names all the time. And that was for, like, as I said, there were mothers that were escaping and fathers trying to find us. A lot of the mothers, and I don't know if this could have happened to my mother, because they can see she was born, they can see where she went to school, they can see right up to where she had the children. There's no death. We can't find her anywhere, but yet I found my birth father. And a lot of the mothers stoned themselves to death. And who knows, she could have done that because they were broken-hearted. You know, I put myself back there. I mean, the pain that I go through, it's probably, I mean, pain is pain, and there's all different sorts of pain. But the pain that I endured is what I know happened to me and how I coped and all that sort of thing. But to actually take a child from a mother, that's a horrendous pain to do to a human being. And you try to analyse that, you can't. You know, you just can't do that. It's horrific. And the culture is fractured. It is fractured. It always will stay fractured, unfortunately, because of language. That's one. Because we can't live off country, So we can't teach our kids, our Djarams, how to live off a country, and this is why we're sick. The foods that we're eating makes us sick. If we're back to country and we're living like we can just live off kangaroo and things like that, and fish, we're okay. But you try and have your vegetables and things now, there's chemicals. They put them in the soil, like it gets in there, you know. It's not good for anybody, let alone us, but it's not good for anybody. So we find that, and the doctors, they find us very interesting, I suppose you could call it. As soon as they see on my chart, oh, you're Aboriginal, and I go, yeah. And they go, oh, okay, well, we don't know how we're going to do this. So then they start trying to talk to Aboriginal doctors because they don't know what to do. Our bodies are different, which sounds really bizarre, but yeah, we must be different inside. But yeah, it's interesting. But I just go and get the children to understand history's history, and you've got to do the best you can to make your life better. I dealt with a young man today, and he came to me, and he's from Cairns. And he said to me, my pain wouldn't be anywhere as bad as your pain. And I said, oh, I wouldn't say that, love. I said, pain is pain. It's just how people can cope, you know. I said, so he told me that his family couldn't cope with him, so they just gave him up. And he's a beautiful young man, isn't he? Absolutely. And we had a chat, and he had a tear in his eye, and I said, don't be ever ashamed to cry, because we're all born with tear ducts. You're not a wuss because you're a man and you cry. That's your empathy, that's your feeling, you're human. And he wanted a picture taken with me because we had a chat later on about different things on how we fitted in the one boat sort of thing, you know. And he said to me what I said to him at the end. I said to him, when you get older and you find the love of your life, she will give you unconditional love. Then you have children and you will have unconditional love that will never happen to them what happened to you. And that will be the closure for you. And he said, thank you, Aunty, because you've given me hope for my life because of what's happened to him. And so everybody's pain, it's pain. And everybody needs to be heard. You know, we could turn around and think, oh, well, like I've had people say to me, what did I say? I had a person say to me, oh, you're lucky you were taken away. And I'll go, oh yeah, why? Oh, well, you know, you got to go to school, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I said, oh, do you know my mother and father? And they just stopped and looked at me and they went, no. And I said, see, well, if you don't know my parents, how could you say that I'm better off without them? And they had no comeback. You know, like, you've got to be a little bit cheekier and learn to get back at them in a sort of a nice way, but still it's like, huh, that's one for me, you know. So yeah, you just got to, and I try to teach children that respectfully. You know, the little ones, the little dark ones, they'll come and say, I can't dance, Auntie. And I'll go, well, what's dance? What they're doing out there. And I go, yeah, they're shaking a leg, they're enjoying themselves. And I'll say, okay, you sit next to Auntie, it's all good. We'll watch together. So they watch, and you'll see their little foot tapping, you know. And I go, you want to go out there? Nah. You want to go out there? Yeah. You know, go on, off you go. What am I going to do? Be a bird, you're free. Be a, what did I call it? Butterfly. You're a beautiful butterfly, you know? So they're out there and they're imagining. And I say to them, even though they're Aboriginal children, don't ever let anybody say to you, you're a half caste, you're a quarter, you're a third. You're not a lump of meat. You're Aboriginal. And if anybody says this to you, no, you're only half a thing. Which part of my body? My arm, my leg? And the kids think that's funny because you're going to chop off their arm. Is it this arm? Is it this arm? You make it easy for them to stand up for themselves. And when they can come back at something like this, but they're not being rude, they feel proud. And it helps the children to grow and to stand up and be proud. Because there's too much racism going on all the time. And we're, all of us and our future generations are the only ones that can stop the racism. It'll get less and less. It's got less since, I think, since I've been a child. I can see a lot of doors opening, like being asked here today is a wonderful thing for me, because there's people like yourself sitting here and you want to know. And even though you could walk away from it and think, I don't know how she could have done that or how she could have lived through it. It's amazing what anyone can actually live through when you have to. You don't realise it when you're a kid, you know, but you just do. And as I said, when we were able to play little tricks on the nuns and things, that was good payback. And we didn't mind all getting flogged because we all got it. It was all equal. So if we were sore on the bum, we were all sore on the bum, you know. So yeah, that's for the names. I don't repeat my names because they're street names. I had a meeting last week with the Lord Mayor, and there's just things that you have a meeting with elders to see what might need to be done or things like that. So they've asked me to come on board with the council, and they call it the RAP, Reconciliation Action Plan. And I said, yeah, that'll be interesting, I like to do that. And then they were talking about boundary road, boundary streets, and getting rid of them. And I said, no, I'm against that. No, that's history. I said, we're having trouble now in history. And I said, what they should do is leave boundary streets and leave boundary roads and things and put a sign next to it, what it was put there for. And people will see that, you know. I said to him, to Adrian, I said, how did Queen Street become? And he looked at me and he went, I don't know. And I said, yeah, there used to be a plaque in front of Penny's. I think it was Myers or something then. When they were doing all up the valley, the plaque disappeared. Well, nobody knows that was all done by convicts. So the history goes, and you can talk about it, but to actually see it is more for learning. Well, I find that. I'm sure you, like, what you see is better than what you're just hearing, you know, and so they're going to do that. I have to do it before I cark it. I'd like to see it. I think the only way that you can heal is, like, for me personally, I'll only speak for myself, what I'm doing, and people are listening and not criticising or that didn't happen or whatever, that's a healing for me, because I'm getting history across. And, you know, as I've said to children in schools about lies, right? You tell a lie, be honest to your parents about what you've done. That's only the one lie. It's when you say, I didn't do it, that's another lie. So what you're going to get more in trouble with is you denying, saying, I didn't do it, than being honest and saying, I did do it, and just deal with that there and then. And if you tell a lie, you've got to have a very bloody good memory. Yep. And if someone asks me my story in another 5 years' time, I can say exactly the same story. Tell the truth. The truth can never hang you. So I find personally for me, for people like yourselves, I'm very overwhelmed on having you sit here and listen to me and to ask questions, because that's how we learn. Other people might find it better if they had a plaque or something up. A plaque for me, the only plaques that I do like is what I've done today, that I got the Stolen Generation plaques done. There was one that was in front of City Hall. This is years ago. Went to lay the wreath and we couldn't find it. And they actually put it in the cement slabs, with all the cement slabs. So it was one of them. And here's a wreath sitting like in the middle of King George Square, like if someone had dropped a plant there, you know. And I ended up going and getting it, you know, going through the procedures, but to get it lifted up. And we're seeing the plaques now. I think that's enough to show that that's done. Kevin Rudd, he done a wonderful job. He knew he was going to get kicked out. He knew it, he was warned. I was down there for the Sorry, a company that I still volunteer for. And they said, what are you doing for the Sorry, Auntie? And I said, oh, I'll probably watch it on TV like everybody else, you know. Oh, he said, I'll ring you back. And I was used to Luke doing that because he was always busy. He rang me back and he said, I want you to pack your bag. We're on a flight. We're going to Canberra. And I've never been on, that was the first time a plane, that was my first and last. And it was so exciting. He travels all the time and he's got his head down between his legs and I'm going, look out there, look at that. And he's going, I can't. And I'm going, oh, look, you know. I thought it was just awesome. And then we stayed at Tet City. I've got such good memories of all that. No plaque can ever cover that. That's in my memory, you know. And thousands and thousands of people that came, walked from Sydney and everywhere, you know, just to support it. And Kevin Rudd came down the night before the actual Sorry happened, and he had it all written on butcher paper. And we were down in the elders' tent, but we're outside the tent and we had all our feet, we had a fire going and we had all our feet under the sand, and he come down with two fellas and just dressed in jeans and normal dress, you know. And he says, what are you doing with your shoes all off? And he said, take them off, put your feet under there, it's easier. So he was there, same thing, with his feet under with us. And we were doing marshmallows and talking. And he wanted to know, is there things he wanted added to it or taken out of it? And he said that night that he doesn't know how long he's going to last, but he said, this will be my first and last chance that I can say hello and goodbye to yous. Because he knew, he was warned, You say it and you're gone. But he laughed all the way because it's down in history now and they can't get rid of it. And so again, who won? You know, I don't know what they're trying to hide, but too much of Australia wants to know. And they can't stop people like yourself wanting to know things and that. They can do their damnedest, but they can't stop it. The ball's rolling. So I think some people might want plaques or something, or I don't know what they want, but I just think by talking to people, sharing a yarn with people, building that bond that we can walk together and we all can have a peaceful life, I think that's rewarding enough. Because everybody goes through some sort of pain in their life, you know, and we all got to have respect for everybody that is going through pain. Just be that friend, you know, just be those ears. Just listen to them if they want to talk. If not, just give them a hug. I'm here. And they know when to come back if they need to.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for asking.
Sharing your story of the stolen generation with us, Aunty Teresa. You're absolutely right. I think everybody here would agree that the way we learn and understand and don't repeat is to hear firsthand those stories that come from those who have the lived experience of it. So I think it's the most powerful thing. And certainly, you know, when I think about my school life, I never learnt anything about our Indigenous history.
As I said last week, I had a meeting with the Lord Mayor, and I said, oh, I've got a couple of more things I need to say to you. And he said, oh yes, Aunty, what's that? And I said, now what's this thing of people becoming Australian citizen and they've got to learn about Captain Cook? Hang on a minute, you want the people to know about the stolen generation or the culture, you want it in the schools, but you're teaching people that come from other country Captain Cook. I said, that needs to be changed. And he went, all right. Again, I don't know how long I've got to wait for that, but you've got to tell them, haven't you?
That's right. And I think we're all a little bit more enlightened, and it gives us pause for further reflection.
And moving on too.
And moving on. So thank you so much for your contribution here today with us. We've been really honoured that you've been able to do that and come here and share with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.